Shalom Aleichem, everybody. Today's daf is daf Dalid, and we start from the top line, first word. I love when that happens. Okay, Zug the Heilige Gemura, we learned that when a kohen shechts a carbon, he's got to shecht it l'shem the carbon that it was brought for. Suppose it's an oila, you got to shecht it l'shem oila. It's a shlamim, you got to shecht it l'shem shlamim. And that's called, if he doesn't, it's called shinui kodesh. And he also has to shecht it l'shem the bailam for the person who brings it. If he changes that, he shechts for somebody else called shinui bailam.
The person who owns it, not the person who brings it.
Right, because it's something to be a shliach, you're saying.
No, because if the Baal is kosher shchita, the Kohen is kosher shchita.
Ah.
So it's
Not always the person that brings it is the person who owns it. Okay? Mekabel, Rav Shol, Manishma. Okay, we're up to Daf Dalid, Omed Aleph. Yeah, okay, Beseder Gamur. Yes, at this age, yeah, get comfortable. Okay. Yeah. We are up to in Yirtz Hashem top line Daf Dalid Omed Aleph Minolon de Beinan Zvicha L'Shma. You ever wonder that? First couple of blood and Zvachim talk about L'Shma. How do we know that a shchita of a carbon has to be L'Shma? Says the Heilige Gemara, the Omar Kroch, because the pasuk says, Ve'im zevach shlomim karbonoi. Yeah? Very interesting. Which word is extra here? Ve'im zevach shlomim karbonoi. Which word is extra? Zevach. Zevach. Ve'im shlomim karbonoi. What is ve'im zevach shlomim karbonoi? What's that? Zevach. Says the Gemara. Oh, we're talking about a carbon shlomim. Ve'im shlomim karbonoi. The Parsha of Shlomim begins. Oh, we'll tell you in a moment. So the Gemara says, L'chayra, karbonai, Shlomim karbonai, but katuv karbonai. Yeah, so Zevach is extra. Says the Gemara, you know why Zevach means to shecht. Sovech. Shetei Zvicha l'shem Shlomim. The Zvicha, the Shechita has to be l'shem Shlomim. That's why it says the word Zevach. Asks the Gemara, V'dilma hainu shmayu, maybe that's the name. It's called the Zevach Shlomim. Says the Gemara, no. Midchsiva makriv as dam hashlomim. Doesn't say as dam Zevach hashlomim. We call it Shlomim Stam. Hazoyrek es dam ha-shlomim, v'leksiv zevach. V'leksiv zevach, shma minosh, tezvich l'shem shlomim. So you see that the shchita has to be l'shem shlomim when you bring a shlomim, because it says zevach shlomim. The zvicha should be l'shlomim. Ashkan zvicha. So the Gemara, very nice that you have zvicha. How many avodas are there with every carbon? We said 4. Zvicha, Kabbalah's dam, haylach, and zrika. So now that you've established zvicha has to be l'shma, shar avodas minolan. How do I know the other avodas? The other 3 have to be l'shma. V'chitem leilef mizvicha. And if you're going to learn it with a mehatzad, with a binyanav from zvicha, mal zvicha shekei nifsala sheloi l'shem oichlin ba'pesach. Zvicha has a chumrah when it comes to carbon pesach. What's the chumrah? It has to be that he shechts it l'shem people who can eat a kazayas of the carbon pesach. Suppose he shechted it l'shem choylo or l'shem zoken who cannot eat a kazayas in the carbon pesach. It passes the shchita. So you see that shchita is a chumrah over other avodas with regard to carbon pesach. So you can't learn from shchita b'matzad. Yeah, the ones ishlafi achloi techaysu alaseh. So ishlafi achloi means anyone who's counted on this carbon. Yeah, so if you have to shecht it, you shecht it l'shem those who can eat it. If you shecht it l'shem those who can't eat it, then that's a problem. So the Gemara says, therefore you can't learn shar avodas from shchita. So how do you know shar avodas? El omer kro hamakriv es dam shlomim shetehei kabbalah l'shem shlomim. The makriv is called kabbalah. Hamakriv is referring to kabbalah. Kabbalah. We'll see soon in the Gemara why hamakriv is referring to Kabbalah. Yeah? But in the context of the pasuk, we know hamakriv is dam shlomim. Yeah? You're makriv the dam, you're makabil the dam shlomim. How do you know it's Kabbalah? Even though hamakriv, by the way, the word hamakriv means halacha. Right? He nears the dam shlomim. How do you near the dam shlomim? You bring it near. You bring it near through halacha. So why is the Gemara assuming that hamakriv is Kabbalah? Yeah? Because in the context, in the order of the avodas, hamakriv appears right after shchita. So it has to be Kabbalah, because Kabbalah is the second of the avodas, and in the context of the psukim, that's the second. So Hamakriv in this context is Kabbalah. The Gemara is going to ask soon, why are we using a word that means halacha to describe Kabbalah? That's a different shaila. But here the pasuk says Hamakriv is Amshlom to Kabbalah Shem Shlomim. So now I know that the Kabbalah needs L'Shem Shlomim. So asks the Gemara, just write the Kabbalah v'leil v'shchita mina. So learn shchita from Kabbalah with a me'atzad. The Gemara says no, you can't do that either. What's the chilik between Kabbalah? There's a chumrah by Kabbalah's dam that it's possible bizarre, and it has to be a kohen. Mashiach shchita doesn't have to be a kohen. Yeah, it could be a zar, and I'm assuming from the Gemara's lashon, it could also be an isha. Somewhere moichik tevas isha. Okay, let's keep it to a zar. So shchita could be with a zar, but Kabbalah can't be with a zar. It has to be with a kohen. So that's why it's a chumrah by Kabbalah. So if you find the Kabbalah needs to be lishma, so maybe that's dafke Kabbalah, because you find there's a chumrah by Kabbalah, it has to be a kohen as opposed to shchita. Yeah. Okay, so these are just limudim. Ashkeran, shchita, ve Kabbalah. So far, I know, again, the first two of the avodas, shchita ve Kabbalah, they have to be lishma. Shchita is from zevach shlomim, and Kabbalah is from a makriv as dam. Again, the Torah repeats hashlomim. Means a Kabbalah has to be l'shem shlomim. Okay, so I know shchita and Kabbalah. Asks the Gemara, zrika minolan. How do I know zrika? It's very interesting how the Gemara jumps to zrika. Zrika is the fourth.
Because halacha is optional.
Oh, Gemara's going to talk about it. Halacha is optional. Very good. The halacha is the most lenient of all.
It may not be necessary.
Why not? Because you can shecht it right next to the mizbeach. Excellent. Very good. Excellent. So the Gemara just jumps to Zrika. And by the way, the Iker Kapara, we'll see later, happens with Zrika. Zrika is the most important part of the Avodah. Yeah? So Zrika minolan. V'chitem elelef mahani. Maybe you want to learn Zrika from the outside, from Shchita. And Kabbalah, malahani. Shekain to unais tzofoin, v'yeshnon v'chatois apnimiyos. Why does the Torah require Shchita and Kabbalah lishma? I'll tell you why. It has a chumrah. Because Shchita and Kabbalah have to be done B'tzfoina shel HaMizbeach, in the north of the Mizbeach, and there also has, these two avodas are shayich to the Chatas HaPnimis. Lo Zrika, Shchita v'Kabbalah. Zrika not, that's why you can't learn Zrika from Shchita Kabbalah, because Shchita Kabbalah, where do you have a shochat oisoi, al yerech HaMizbeach tzofoina. Shchita always has to occur on the tzofan of the Mizbeach, and by the way, Kabbalah is right after Shchita. So if Shchita has to be on the tzafan, what's Kabbalah? Kabbalah means as soon as you shecht it, you have to be Kabbalah dam. So Shchita Kabbalah is always in the tzafan of the Mizbeach. So the Gemara says, that's a chumrah. There's a specific location where that has to happen. Right? So that's one chumrah. Another chumrah is, you find when you bring a chatas apnimis, there's no halach and zrika to the Mizbeach achitzon. Right? The chatas apnimis becomes nizrak either on the Mizbeach azov or on the paroiches. So you don't have halach and zrika by the chat Mizbeach achitzon, which is also unique to Shchita and Kabbalah. So you have two chumras, two specifics by Shchita Kabbalah that halach and zrika don't have. Number one, it happens on the tzofan of the Mizbeach. Number two, it also happens with chatois hapnimiyos as opposed to halach and zrika. So the Gemara says if you're trying to learn zrika from Shchita Kabbalah, you can't. Because Shchita Kabbalah has two. Halacha shel adam, hakohen molich et adam lamizbeach. B'chatois hapnimiyos, if you shech the chatas hapnimis, right? There's no halacha to the mizbeach achitzon. Because the chatas hapnimiyos is nizrak inside. It's not the din of halacha, the regular halacha that you have by every. By mizbeach azov. And sometimes, depending which carbon it is, sometimes in the paroiches. Yom Kippurim, yeah. What? היה שם מזרק, משהו ש... כלי. ואחר כך, by regular carbonas, you walk over, the kohen walks over with the kli that the dam, that he was makabel the dam in, and he zorik it, depending which type of carbon it is. Matana, shtei matanas, arba matanas, there's matana. Depends which carbon it is. Huh? The blood gets nizrak on the mizbeach. Not on the eish, on the yesod, outside. No, there was a drain. It would go down the drain. What happens? Yeah, the bottom line that it goes down a certain drain. Maybe you have a picture over there.
למה אני שואל? כי אני יודע שאתה אמרת שהיה איזה מקום שהיה שם דשן.
Yeah, yeah.
אתה זוכר? דשן זה מה שנשרף.
Yeah, that was on the Mizbeach. And the first avodah in the Beis HaMikdash was always at Tzoas HaDeshen. Trumas HaDeshen. Trumas HaDeshen means that you cleaned off the deshen from the Mizbeach and you took it out. The first avodah was taking out the garbage, so to speak.
I understand. The blood used to go down, right?
Yeah, it went all the way down below the...
Yeah. It used to go down the side. Rabbi Chavi is here. Okay.
I think they found it, no? They found Yerushalayim. They found where it is. I think I saw it one time. This is a hole, huh? Here also, it goes down here, yeah? It's here? That's what it is?
Two little, there was slips between the yayin and the dam.
Look, it's trouble. Watch the blood trouble. The red thing is blood, no? Oh, the sikra. Okay, so what is this?
That's the makam of the...
No, what is this here? What is this?
It's right here, it's a picture.
This is the blood here?
This is what the dam is poured. When they poured on the...
Rabbi Chavi, we're in the middle of Dav Dalet and Aleph.
It goes down below the mizbeach. Below the mizbeach.
It goes in the basement.
Okay, we'll get Gamsu Masechta. We'll talk about it. But over here, the point is, the Gemara says you can't learn Zrika from Shechita and Kabbalah. Why not? Because Shechita Kabbalah have a chumrah that Shechita Kabbalah have a chumrah that it's to unais tzofen and the yeshna v'chatos apnimiyos.
So what is this?
Okay. Says the Gemara, so how do I know Zrika needs Lashma? Elam across Zrika is not Mashlamim. Stay Zrika Lashem Shlamim. Ask Gemara, Liftach Ramana Zrika V'leilaf Mina. So just write by Zrika and learn everything from Zrika. Mishem Deikla Mifrach Mal Zrika Shekin Chayv Lazar Misa. That's really cool. Zrika is the only one of the four avodas that if a zar does it, he's Chayv Misa. He's Chayv Misa. If a zar sprinkles the blood on the Mizbeach, it's not just an Isser. Like Kabbalah and Halacha, it's a Chiyuv Misa. Okay, now we know.
It can't be in the Azora to begin with.
Huh?
Azora is not supposed to be in the
Yisrael could be in the Azara.
It can be in the Azora.
Yeah, it can be in the Azara. Okay, so he has to be tired. Yeah. So here we have, so far we have Shechita Kabbalah and Zrika, Makar for Shechita Kabbalah and Zrika. We're up to almost the middle of the Dalet Amud Aleph in the middle, almost the middle. Ashkechan. The first word in the line is Zar. Yeah? Zar.
Yeah, okay.
Ashkechan Kulu. I know. I have a makar for Shechita, Zevach Shlomim. I have a makar for Kabbalah. It says a makar dam hashlamim. I have a makar for Zrika. It says in the pasuk Hazorik as dam hashlamim. Now I need the last one, or really the third of the avodah.
What do you mean hashlamim?
Hashlamim means Lashem Shlamim. So I know it has to be Lashma.
Okay.
Haylacha minalan. How do I know the Haylacha also has to be Lashma? V'chitem and leilaf mekulu. If you're going to tell me, and once I know Shechita, Kabbalah, and Zrika, I can learn about Tzad from those three. Like the doctor once said before, that over there, Shechita, Kabbalah, and Zrika is an avodah that you cannot be mavatal. You need it for every carbon. Timer by Haylacha, she'ef shelavatla. Haylacha is not necessarily a necessity for every carbon. Why? Rashi says, Shem rotze shoichet b'tzadam mizbeach v'zorik. He could really shecht it right next to the mizbeach, and he can eliminate the halacha altogether. So therefore, halacha has a kula.
The dam nefesh could go directly from the behemoth.
Yeah, so there's no halacha, exactly. So Mamela, there's a kula on halacha, which prevents it from being learned from Zrika, Shechita, and Kabbalah. So how do I know halacha? So the Gemara says, Ela Amar Kra v'hikriv esakoil hamizbecha. V'omamar, what's v'hikriv? Zu halachas evarim lekevesh. Yeah, really, the word v'hikriv always means to bring closer. How do you bring it closer? Through halacha. So it means halachas evarim. When Torah says v'hikriv esakoil hamizbecha, it's really referring to halachas evarim lekevesh. V'tanya, v'hikriv is Kabbalah sadam. Before we said Akriva was Kabbalah, Va'apik Rachmana b'Lashon Halacha. Why did the Torah use a Lashon Halacha when it tries to describe Kabbalah? The reason why, when the Torah referred to Kabbalah, it refers to Kabbalah with the word that usually means halacha. You know what? To tell you that halacha must be like Kabbalah, and just like by Kabbalah it has to be lishma, halacha also has to be lishma. So now I have a makar for all four avodas, for shchita, Kabbalah, halacha, and zrika. Now the Gemara wants to know, Ashkechan Shina Kodesh. Now you found me Makairas for Shina Kodesh, that you cannot be Meshana the Kodesh, which means you can't be Meshana the carbon. If it's an oila, you can't bring it L'Shem Shlomim. If it's a Shlomim, you can't bring it L'Shem oila. But Shinoi Bailam in Olam, now we want to find the source for Shinoi Bailam. What's Shinoi Bailam? That if I bring a carbon oila, and Rechavia is standing right next to me, so the Kohen, instead of being makravit for me, he decides Shinoi Bailam. He's going to be makravit for you. My carbon for you.
I could do it myself.
You're
Yes.
Gefalt. Okay. So Shina Bailam v'kidashtoi. Okay, yeah, mitzvah to be machabed you. Shina Bailam minolan. Amar Pichas V'Rav Ami Makro ubesar zevach toidas shlomov. The Toida says ubesar zevach toidas shlomov shetei zevicha l'shem toida. Over here it sounds like you have to shecht it l'shem toida. And now, which means Shina Kodesh, you can't be Mashana the type of carbon. Im Eino Inyan L'Shina Kodesh, the Nafkal and Mehasam, but once we already have source for Shina Kodesh, right, then Tanayu Inyan L'Shina Bailam. Then you could use this limud for Shinoi Bailam. So this is a very interesting type of limud. Im Eino Inyan always means that if I don't need this limud for A, we can apply it to B. Very interesting. So this is an Eina Inyan kind of limud. How do I know Shinoi Bailam? By Shchita? Because it says you can't be Mashana Toida Shlomov to a different carbon. Eina Inyan for that, Shinoi Bailam, use for Shinoi Bailam. So the Gemara says,
again, so what do you mean Shinoi Bailam? No, you have to bring the carbon.
You have to be makrit for the person who brings it.
You're about ready to shecht it.
Yeah.
So what? Your makshava has to be what?
Kain's makshava has to be for the owner.
For this particular person.
Yes, person who brings it. So the Gemara says, really? You really think that this is teaching me the halacha of Shinoi Bailam? Look at the Tanya. I need it for a different halacha. Shteit the besar zevach toides shlomov abachanan mishum Rabbi Eliezer bol lamad toida sheshachta l'shem shlomim ksheira. When you bring a toida and the kohen doesn't have in mind for a toida per se, he has in mind for a shlomim. It's still kosher. Why? Because a toida really is a shlomim. Shlomim sheshachta l'shem toida. Shlomim, which is the umbrella, right? The shalmi nozeh, the shalmi mitzayir. There's a toida, all kinds of subcategories in shlomim. But if you narrow down a shlomim to a toida, then it's psula. Ma hefresh bezelazeh. What's the difference? Toida kriya shlomim. Toida is still in the parish of shlomim. It's called the shlomim, and therefore, if the kohen doesn't have in mind for toida per se, for shlomim in general, then it's still good. It's still kosher. The ain't shlomim kriya toida, but shlomim is not called a toida. So therefore, if he takes a regular shlomim and the kohen has in mind for a toida specifically, it won't qualify. So that halacha is learned from the pasuk. So it's not available to darshan for Shina Bailam. So how would I know Shina Bailam? Says the Gemara, Anan mi zevach ka'amrinan. We are learning it from the word zevach, not from toidas shlomov. Rabbi Eliezer's halacha is learned from toidas shlomov. We're learning it from the extra word zevach. Zevach toidas shlomov. Asks the Gemara, Vakatim eboile chatas ve'osham. I still need this pasuk zevach to teach me that a chatas and a osham have the same time frame as a toida. A toida shlomov, zevach includes chatas v'yosham, that it's only nechal l'yoyim v'layla. So I still don't have the word available to teach me shinoi bailam, because I still need it for chatas v'yosham. Talmud loymar zevach menayin talmud loymar zevach in kain nichtav kro besar toida shlomov zevach. So the Gemara says my zevach shma ben atarti. So the placement of the word zevach teaches me both. If it just would have wanted to teach me the time frame of a chatas v'yosham is like a toida, then it should have said the word zevach after toida shlomov. My zevach, why are we putting zevach before toida shlomov? Shma min atarti, that you can't be mashana the bailam. Okay, so that's a very interesting, in Meinoi Inyan, the zevach is in the wrong place. Why is it here, not there? And this is how we know that you cannot be mashana the bailam when it comes to a shlomim. Okay, when a toida shlomim. Gemara says ashkechan zvicha. So now you found me zvicha, shchita, right? But we said there are 4 avodas. Shar avodas minolan. I still need a source that you cannot be Meshana, the Bailam, when it comes to Halacha, Kabbalah and Zrika, the other three, Shar Avodas Minola, V'chitei Min Leilav Mizvicha. And if you'll tell me we can learn it all from Zvicha with a Me'atzad or a Binyanav, I'll tell you Nishtazai. Mal Zvicha shekein poisel shelo l'sham oichel b'Pesach. Yeah, there's a chumrah by Zvicha, because by Zvicha, it passes by Karban Pesach if the guy shechts it, shelo l'sham oichel, for people who can't eat a kazayas from it. So then I can't learn it from outside. So how would I know it? Nemr Zvicha b'shina kodesh and Nemr Zvicha b'shina bailam. Now what did I know? There's a Zvicha b'shina bailam. And there's a Zvicha, different Zvicha b'shina kodesh. Ma Zvicha amura b'shina kodesh lechilakta bein Zvicha l'shar avodas. Av Zvicha amura b'shina bailam letecholek ben bein Zvicha l'shar avodas. So you make a matzat from shina bailam to shina kodesh. So the Gemara says, not so fast. Ikal mifrach. I have 4 kashas on this matzat. Number 1. Mal shina kodesh came psula begufa. Shina kodesh, when the kohen is meshana from an oila to a shlamim, that's shina kodesh. That's a psul in the gufa behema. You're changing the classification of this gufa behema. You're saying instead of an oila, now it's classified as a shlamim. That's your kavana. That's a lot worse.
That's a downgrade.
And number 2,
that's a downgrade. Yes.
Either or, it doesn't matter. The point is that you're changing the gufa behema from a shlamim to an oila, from an oila to a shlamim.
Yeah.
It's a shin that's not nikkur.
Oh, Gavaldig.
Yeah,
Okay.
So,
Okay. They want to say that's why maybe he's not chayiv to pay him. Hezek shein and nikkur lo shmei hezek. Maybe in Hilchas Nezikin, in Choshen Mishpat, in Kachim maybe it's a different gather. Okay, the Yeshnoi ba'arba avoidus, another chilik when Shina Kodesh Shina Bailam is Shina Kodesh Yeshnoi ba'arba avoidus. It applies to all 4 avoidus. What does that mean? What does that mean? The Gemara is going to talk about it in a second. The Yeshnoi la'achar misa, and if somebody dies after his mafresh carbon, right, then you have to be makravit, and you cannot be meshana the type of carbon that the person designated it for, even after he dies. Yeah, but Shinoi Bailam, it's the Bailam died, so he's not around. So Avadi can be Mishana the Bailam once he dies. The Yeshna B'tzibur can be Yochud.
Again, how would that work?
So meaning that Bailam dies, he's mafresh a carbon. Let's say he says, "I'm going to bring an oila," and he drops dead afterwards.
Yeah.
That oila, when it's brought by the Yarshim, it's certainly not brought for the Bailam. The Bailam is not here anymore.
I see. Right.
So
okay.
Shinoi Bailam is Shayach La'achar Misa. In other words, you could change the Bailam. The Bailam. It's simply by the very definition of the Misa, you're not bringing it for the Bailam anymore.
Right.
Whereas by Shinoi Kodesh, if the Bailam before he died said it's an Oila, the Yarshim have to follow through on that commitment and bring it as an Oila. So therefore, Shinoi Kodesh has a Chumrah. But Yeshnoi L'achar Misa, we're still makpid by Shinoi Kodesh, even after the guy dies, he has to bring it the way he designated it. The Yeshnoi B'tzibur Kabiyochid, and also by Shinoi Bailam, it's not shaykh. The whole halach of Shina Bailam is not shaykh by Karban Tzibur, because everybody is his Bailam. You can bring it for Yankel instead of Ruvain. They're all the Bailam. The Tzibur is all the Bailam. So the whole halacha of Shina Bailam doesn't apply to a Tzibur. It only applies to a Yachid. So you see that there are chumras that Shina Kodesh has that Shina Bailam doesn't, which will prevent you to learn Shina Bailam from Shina Kodesh. So the Gemara says, now I ask you 4 kashas, 4 chilukim between Shina Kodesh and Shina Bailam. We turn the page of Dal Ramad Beis. Va'afal gav the tarti lav dafka. Even though 2 of the 4 isn't so valid, there aren't such great questions. Yeah, tarta miya dafka, but 2 out of the 4 are really good pirchas. Yeah. So which ones are not good and which ones are good? So the Gemara says, why is Shina Bailam different? That you're assuming it doesn't pass the gufa behema. Because machshava ba'alma, because you're dealing with a machshava alone. Shinoi kodesh nami machshava ba'almahu. Shinoi kodesh also machshava. So what are you going to tell me? Why is Shinoi kodesh pasel? Elakiva the achshava pasla. Achanami kiva the achshava pasla. So if machshava affects the behema and pasels the behema by Shinoi kodesh, so that machshava of Shinoi Bailam also pasels the behema. So there's really no difference. By the way, Tosfos, top Tosfos, over here machshava ba'alma. Take a look. Vafilu yehi tzarich dibur, kiven de leke ma'isa v'kamachshava ba'alma. Right away, Tosfos over here is mashma need a dibur also. Right? You were asking me before the shir. This Tosfos is clearly on the Gemara of machshava ba'alma. Tosfos right away jumps and points out that bitus saim you need a dibur, and still the Gemara would consider it like a machshava because it doesn't have a ma'isa. Right? Dibur is not a ma'isa.
But it's okay. It's close. Okay.
It's not a ma'isa.
It's closer to a ma'isa than just a thought.
Correct, but it's still it's still ears on the side of machshav.
It's not physical.
Yes.
הרי אומר, אני מקריב קורבן זה לכפרת פלוני בן פלוני.
Yeah.
נכון?
Yeah.
בשפתיים, הוא חייב לבטא בשפתיים.
Exactly.
הוא מקריב את זה.
Bidyuk. He's shechting the carbon, and he's saying it. He's explicitly articulating. Yeah. Yes, but let's say he's saying it to the wrong person. So if by Shina Kodesh it passes, Shina Bailam it also passes. That's why that's not a good kasha. It's not a good chiluk. And the other kasha is even though according to Rav Pichus of Mari, he says that even if the Bailam dies and now the Yarshim bring it, they still have to be makrivet l'shem the deceased. So you see that Shina Bailam, the din of Shina Bailam also applies la'achar misa. So it's no better or it's no worse than Shina Kodesh. So those two are not really great questions. Says the Gemara, but Tarti miya ikal mifrach. The other two questions stand, right? 2 out of the 4 really stand, and therefore it ruins whatever ma'atzad you wanted to learn Shina Bailam from Shina Kodesh. Doesn't work. So now we're left with a question again. The question at hand is, I know that shchita, if you're meshana the Bailam by shchita, it's puzzle. We have that Einoi Inyan by the Zevach Toidas Shlamav, the placement of the word Zevach, that I know. The Gemara wants to shar avoidus minolan. How do I know the other avoidus? Zrika, Kabbalah, Hilacha. That if you say l'shem a different Bailam, as the Kohen does the avoida, how would I know that also passes the carbon? So the Gemara answers.
Now the one who makes the mistake, does he have to pay for it or
That's
not?
a great question, and I'm not sure. We have to discuss it. It's Choshen Mishpat.
Yeah.
And the doctor was mentioning it's a hezek shein and nicker, and that could be a reason why.
No.
According
It is,
to
okay, but it's a right. Okay, it may not physically be obvious, but it's mechayev money, right? It's mechayev to somebody to be mashlan.
again, this is not. I'm not familiar because we're gonna have to wait till we go back to the cycle of Baba Kama, Baba Matzia, Baba Basra, and we look it up. I'll give it to you for homework, Rabbi Chavi. Come back and let us know. Elo Mervashi, Omar Kro, V'nir
How many
Tzoloi.
Gilgul can you wait? How many Gilgul?
How do I know that Zrika cannot be for a different Bailam? There's no Shina Bailam. In other words, there's a problem with Shina Bailam by Zrika because Torah says, "V'nir tzaloi l'chaper olav v'lo el chaveiroi." Right? By the way, when it says l'chaper, which part of the avoida is the kapara? Shchita, halacha, Kabbalah, halacha, and Zrika. Which one is the kapara? The Zrika. So here, we're learning Zrika over here. You want to know, how do I know there's a problem with Shina Bailam by Zrika? It says, V'nir tzaloi l'chaper alav, on the person that brought it. Says the Gemara, that's how I know, olav lo chaveiroi. Ask the Gemara, slow down. V'aylachu da'asa. The word olav is really available to darshan Shina Bailam by Zrika. Haime boy lelikatanya, V'nir tzaloi l'chaper olav, Reb Shimon Oimar, ez sha'olav chayev ba'achar yusai. We learned the halacha of Chiyav Achrayas, that if anyone says Harei Olai Oila, which is Olav, he's Chayav Achrayas, and if he doesn't say Olav Olai, then he's not Chayav Achrayas. So that word is not available to teach you Shina Bailam. V'Omer of Yitzchak Bar Avdimi, my timer. What's the reason by Olai, by Olav, he's Chayav Achrayas? Kiv the Omer Olai, command the ton like Asfadami. It's like he's mamish carrying it on his shoulder, which means he's makabel the olav achrayis on his shoulder until he follows through with his promise. So I need the olav to teach you that he's chayav b'achrayis. It's not available to teach you Shina Bailam. So Gemara says, Ravashi, mevenir tzaloi lechaper ka'amar. He's not learning from olav. You're right. Olav, I need for Reb Shimon's halacha. But it says loy. It's only for him, for the person who brought it, but not for anybody else. So at this point, I already know Zvicha and Zrika. So Gemara says, Ashkech and Zvicha, Zrika. Now I know Zvicha, right? Shina Bailam was a problem by Zvicha, by Shchita. And I also know Zrika because V'nir Tzaloi. Kabbalah minolan. How do I know Kabbalah also Shina Bailam is an issue? And if you want to learn from outside, the binyanav from Zvicha and Zrika, once I know those two, I can know Kabbalah as well. Nicht as schnell. Mal Zvicha Zrika sheken avoida shechayav oleh bachutz. Why is Zvicha and Zrika a problem when you're Meshana the Bailam? You know why? Because it has another chumrah that Kabbalah doesn't have. if you do shchita outside the azara, or if you're zoyrek outside of the azara, you're chayiv. Shechayoven oleo bachutz. Right? Over there, you're chayiv karis if somebody shechts it or spills the blood as zoyrek as adam outside of the Beis HaMikdash, he's chayiv karis. Masha'enken by Kabbalah, if you're makabel adam outside of the azara, you're not chayiv karis. So maybe only those two, where you find the chumrah of bachutz, maybe those two, there is a problem of shinoi bailam. But a mehechatesi to learn from there to Kabbalah, el Omer Ravashi asya me el nazir. Kabbalah I know from a different source. El nazir. El nazir is the shlomim that a nazir brings. Right? The nazir brings 3 karbanas, a chatas, an oil, and a shlomim. The ayil that he brings is a shlomim. The chsiv is the ayil yasa zevach shlomim. So over there, you see that it says zevach shlomim. What is it zevach? It's ayil yasa shlomim. Why is it zevach? Zevach is extra. So we learn shetei asiyasoi, which means whatever the asiya is to the shlomim, l'shem shlomim. And I don't need it for shina kodesh. The nafklei mehasam. I already know shina kodesh. We said in Amar Aleph. Tneuing l'shina bailim. So I need it for shina bailim. Not so fast. I can't even learn from Eino Indian. Why not? Because if you read the pasuk carefully, you'll see there's a klal and a prat. Yasa is a klal. Zevach is a prat, right? It's specific. Yasa is general. So we have a klal that wherever you have a general word and a specific word, klal prat, ein bechlal elo mashem beprat, which means zvicha en midi achrina loy. It's only zvicha and not midi achrina. And what are we trying to learn out over here? We're trying to learn out Kabbalah. But once I have a klal prat, so l'chayra, this prat is emphasizing, doubling down, that it's only shchita we're talking about over here and nothing else. That only the shchita needs to be l'shem bailim. So how can you learn Kabbalah from here? So the Gemara says, no, it's not a klal prat. It's not a valid klal prat. You know why? Because more says loy. Iksev midachin loy. What is iksev yasa shlomim zevach? If the word shlomim would have followed the word yasa kedeka'amr, then you would be right for assuming that it's a klal and a prat, right? Hashta dechsev yasa zevach shlomim have le klal she'enoi molei. It's not a full klal. V'chol klal she'enoi molei ein donen oisai b'chlal prat. Is not subject to the rule of klal prat. What's he saying? He's saying like this. When you say yasa, it's a half a statement. Yasa what? So the klal of yasa is incomplete. It's not full. It should say yasa shlomim. That's the klal, right? And then it should say zevach, which is the prat. So if we would have said it that way, I would have said, oh, that is the classic klal of prat. Ein b'chlal ela mashem b'prat. But if you say yasa alone, and then you stick in zevach, and then you put shlomim at the end, that's a half-baked klal. And that's not subject to the rule of klal prat, and therefore it can include not just shchita but also Kabbalah. So the Gemara says, Ravina says no, l'olam donen. Really, you could say this is a good klal prat, and it only means zvicha. So how can we learn Kabbalah from here? Says Ravina, La Hashem chazar v'kolal. It says like this in the Torah. It says the full pasuk is v'sa'ayil yaseh klal. Zevach is a prat. Shlomim Lashem is another klal. Lashem is another klal. So you have a klal uprat to klal. And whenever you have a klal uprat to klal, you don't say that it's only the prat itself. It's in bechlal elamasha beprat. It has to be only similar to the prat. Okay? So there, it's a little easier to include Kabbalah now because from the klal on the 2 bookends of Zevach, you have a klal before, a klal after. That is a whole different halacha of klal prat to klal, and klal prat to klal can be marba a dovar ke'en haprat, which can include Kabbalah. So the Gemara asks, whoa, you want to say it's a klal prat to klal? Not so fast. Holodami klal kamala klal basra. We're dealing with 2 very different types of klalim or in the pasuk, right? Klal kama maraba asiyos v'suloi. The first klal is marba asiyos, avoidus, right? The arba avoidus, asiyos, anything that's done to a carbon. That's one type of klal. Klal basra, which is la Hashem, which means anything that's La Hashem includes not just the 4 avodas. That includes whatever is La Hashem, can include afilo shvichas shirayim, right? The shiyorei adam that you pour on the side of the mizbeach, or the aktaras emurin, which you then put on the mizbeach. So you have one klal is much more general. The La Hashem is much more inclusive than the yaseh of the zevach, which is only the 4 avodas. So whenever you have a klal pratik klal, where the first klal is more narrow, and the second klal is wider and includes more, that's not subject to the rules of klal pratik klal. Says the Gemara, no, Tanya Rabbi Shmuel b'chlal pratik darsh kai gavna. Now we find that Rabbi Shmuel, he taka does darshan klal pratik klal, even when the 2 klalim are different. And he says, klal pratik klal, iyatadar elkena prat, map. Once you establish that this pasuk has a klal pratik klal and you darshan it, now it's pashat how I know the other avodas need lashman, right? To loch and kabbalah. Because I darshan like this, ma prat mefurish. Avoida, the prat which is zevach, zvicha is avoida shchita, ubeinan lashman, and I need lashman by shchita. Af kol avoida bein lashman. So also all the other avodas adam also need lashman. Okay, wow. Whew. So now we have, Gemara is struggling to figure out, how do I know shar avodas shinoi bailam is a problem? And the answer is, I learned it from El Nazir, from the Shlomim of a Nazir, where it says the word zevach. Im einoi inyan lashina kodesh tneyu in lashina bailim. It's only zevach. Klal pratik includes all the avodas. Unbelievable Gemara. You see to what extent the Gemara is darshaning to figure out how we know what is the source that shinoi bailim bakarbonas passes it even by shar avodas. Says the Gemara, ma prat mefurish avoida. So we are right now. We are Dalet Amud Beis.
Yeah, right.
The first word is ubeinan. Ubeinan is the first word in the line. Ubeinan lishman. So now the Gemara is going to elaborate on this klal of pratik klal. Gemara says like this.
How far down is it?
It's
3/4 away.
No, it's about 20 lines from where it's wide.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I got it. Okay.
I mean, right. Ima prat.
Yeah, right. Yes.
Now the Gemara is basically going to explain what the ke'ena prat is. In other words, what's the rule by klal pratik klal? Klal pratik klal done in whatever the ke'ena prat. You identify the characteristics of the prat and you apply that to the klal. Whatever else has those characteristics of the prat, we can apply to the klal, and that's included. So the Gemara is going to define what is the prat exactly. So ima prat mefurish avoida. Number one, we know it's an avoida, right? Zevach is an avoida.
Yeah.
V'chayav
Zevach is a shchita.
shchita.
Right? Yeah, okay.
V'chayavnu le'bachutz. And you're chayav on shchita if you shecht it outside the Beis Hamikdash. You chayav kars. So av kol. So maybe what the klal includes, which is kena prat, is anything that's avoida. V'chayavnu le'bachutz. What would that include then? Shchita uzrika. Zrika is the only one that fits that bill of having the avoida that has a shem avoida, and it's also chayiv bachutz. So shchita zrika and kabbalah v'lacha loy. Then you'll exclude 2 of the 4 avoidas because kabbalah and lacha doesn't have a chayiv kares if you do it outside the Beis Hamikdash. Inami, or you could say it differently. Ima prat mefurish dover atoin sofen the yeshna v'chatoras apnimiyas. Shchita has the maila of the chumrah of it needing to be performed in the tzafin of the azara. Right. And also yeshna v'chatoras apnimiyas. Shchita also applies to chatoras apnimiyas. So avkol, so what are you going to include when you define the prat? What are you going to include? Avkol atoin tzafin v'yeshna v'chatoras apnimiyas. So then you'll say shchita v'kabbalah and zrika loy. So ikla meimer hachi, ikla meimer hachi. It depends on how you define the ke'ena prat. Right, shchita has many characteristics. Which ones are you going to choose? And depending on which one you choose to define the prat with, that'll impact what you're going to include in the klal. So ikla me'merachi, vikla me'merachi, you could say either way. You can define it one of 2 ways. Shkulanhan. So ibazoi, both are equal. V'yuvoyu shneyen. Yeah, both can be included in the ke'ena prat. You have zrika, which is similar, right, in a sense to the prat, because it also is chayiv bachutz, and it's an avoida, and you also have kabbalah, and you also have kabbalah, which is similar Kabbalah and Halacha, which is similar to Shechita because it's Tar and Sofan. So therefore, it's Shkulan v'Yevoyu Shneyan. Lishna Achrina, another way to express is Chada Teku b'Milsa. Yes, since they're both equal, so Chada Teku b'Milsa, which means you learn Kabbalah and Zrika both from Shechita and all by all these avodas there would be a halach of Shina Bailam. Ibai Seima. Another way to answer how you would learn Zrika is Midir Ravashi Nafka. I know it from Ravashi, from Venir Tzaloi. I know it from Ravashi, from Venir Tzaloi. Yeah, that was really the limud.
That's when you're careful not to carry it around. It's all about the Chaim and Muktzim.
Why didn't we go with Ravashi? Why do we have to go with the Klal Pratik Klal? Yeah, okay, no. Yaki did it. The whole question was for Kabbalah, not for Zrika. Okay, so the Gemara. We are up to, where are we up to now? We're up to the first wide line, Davdal Ramad Beis. Yeah, first wide line, Davdal Ramad Beis.
Achrina, yeah. Damim Achrina? What is it? Yeah?
Sorry, 3 lines from the, a little before that. 3 lines before the wide lines of Davdal Ramad Beis. Ashkichin El Nazir. Now you've proven, you've provided a source that Shinoi Bailam is an issue by Shar Avoidis from El Nazir. El Nazir is a very specific carbon. But Shar Shlamim and Nolan, how do I know? El Nazir is a subcategory of a Shlamim, right? You have different types of Shlamim. Right? You have Shalmei Nazir, Shalmei Mitzayra, no, that's the Asham, but you have different Shlamims. So the Gemara says, I know El Nazir, but all the Sha'ar Shlamims, how do I know that they have to be done L'Shem Bailam? Maybe you'll say, I'll learn it from my Mematzina from El Nazir. Can't do that. Mala El Nazir shkein yesh imoy damam acherim. Yeah? El Nazir has a chatas and an oila, right? Dam acherim means other bloods. Yeah? So maybe when the Torah requires machshava L'Shem Bailam, is only by El Nazir because it comes with a chatas and an oila. But if a guy brings a regular shlamim, how would I know that also needs l'shem bailam? So the Gemara says, "Imkein nichtav rachmana nichtav shlamav." His shlamim, my shlamim, l'rabbis call shlamim. Yeah, it says shlamim and not shlamav. That's marba all kinds of shlamim. Gemara says, "You're right. Okay, ashkan shlamim. Now I know shlamim in general, but shar kol kachim and nolan. How do I know all the other kachim? Right? How do I know an oila, for example? Chitem and elef mishlamim." And if you're going to want to learn it from Shlamim, Mal Shlamim shkein to unen smicha. You need smicha sabaylim on the head of the carbon before shchita. And it also needs nesachim. It also needs yayin that are brought with the carbon. It nufas chazei v'shaik, and it also needs the kain to lift up the chazei and the shaik together with the bailim. So it has all these unique halachas. So maybe because it has all those unique halachas, maybe that's why the Torah says it also has to be l'shem bailim. But how would I know to learn shar kachim from there? Elamakro says the Gemara, Zoi Satoira la Oila, la Mincha, v'la Chatas, v'la Osham, v'la Miluim, l'Zevach HaShlamim. The Torah sums up, right, all the karbonos in one pasuk, Hekishon HaKosev l'Shlamim. Torah was makish all the karbonos to Shlamim. Ma Shlamim, just like by Shlamim, you find the halacha of Bein Shina Kodesh, Bein Shina Bailam, Be'inon L'Shma. You can't be Mashana, the Shinoi Kodesh. Kodesh means whatever the carbon is, that's what you have to keep it as. You have to have a machshava. And also Shinoi Bailam. You have to do L'Shem HaBailam. Af Koil, so to all carbonas, Bein Shinoi Kodesh, Bein Shinoi Bailam, Be'inon Lishma. So that's why I know Shar Kachim. So that's interesting. So the Gemara basically, up until this point, the Gemara wanted to know, how do I know the din of Shinoi Kodesh? Gemara had a bunch of drashas from Shlamim. Gemara says, how do I know the din of Shina Bailam? Also a bunch of drashas from Shlamim. Gemara says, very nice, you proved to me that there's a din of Shina Kodesh, Shina Bailam by Shlamim. But how do I know all the other karbonas, that this halach applies to all the other karbonas? Shlamim could be unique. It has all these unique dinim of tenufa, you have smicha, right? You have nesachim. How do I know to apply the Shina Kodesh Shina Bailam to other karbonas? The Gemara brought a pasuk of Zay Satayra. It's all compared to a Shlamim. So Gemara now asks, on the original halach in the Mishnah, go back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah said, the very first line in our Mishnah, Daf Beis Amud Aleph, when we started the Masechta, it says, Kol ha-zvachim shenizbuchu sheloi l'shmon, yeah, ksherim. It's kosher, you could still bring it onto the Mizbeach, ela sheloi olu l'baylam l'shem choiva. So here the Gemara wants to know, how do you know it's kosher? If it's missing, now that we've established that it needs L'Shem Kodesh, that it needs L'Shem Bailam, this Kohen, who was sleepy and groggy, unfocused, yeah, I don't care if he didn't sleep the night before. Yeah, Lamaisa, he missed out on the L'Shem Kodesh. He missed out on the halach of L'Shem Bailam. Who is to say that it's still kosher? It should be Pasal Lagamri. Ask the Gemara, Ema, Heicha the Shachadu Shaloi L'Shma Paslu. How does the Mishnah know it's still kosher? It should be Pasal Lagamri. On my cross has the pasuk, Moitzas v'sachat tishmei v'sisa kasher nedarto l'Hashem elekecha nedava. Here the pasuk seems to call it a neder first and then jumps to nedava. Hai nedava nederu. You just start off with neder. Elo says the Torah im k'moshe nedarto asisa. If you follow through on your neder, which means you said you're going to bring an oila. So if you follow through and you brought the oila, which means L'Shem Kodesh L'Shem Bailim, then you hey neder, then you follow through, it's a neder. The imlav, but if you didn't do it, which means it either wasn't L'Shem Kodesh L'Shem Bailim, yehei nedava, it's still a korban nedava, which means you could still be makriv it on the Mizbeach. It's still kosher. Mazda Meret. Wow, it's... Wow, yeah. יפה מאוד. תפילה is karbonis, it's כן karbonis.
Oh, of course.
כן. תנאי. יפה. יפה מאוד. What? Then you'd have to daven over again because
then it's just a stum.
If you say it's in a dava, what do you mean? If you say but tefillah,
dava is harei
a dava is a rezu, yeah.
לא, אם לא עלה לי.
It's a rei Allah, yeah.
אומר, אם לא עלה לי התפילה.
Yeah. Then you have to do it again if it's not oila.
So by Shemona Esrei,
What if you have a suffix? So he's saying if you have a suffix, let's say you forget, you're not sure if you have to do it again or not. Then he does it at Tanai. That's reminiscent of what the Gemara is saying here. It's reminding him of that halacha. I'm not sure. This is... Yeah. Here what's happening is, you didn't follow through on your promise because you said, I'm going to bring an oila. When you brought it, it wasn't l'shem you, and it wasn't l'shem oila. The kohen messed up. So here, you didn't follow through on the neder. Im k'moshina darta asisa, neder yehei. V'im lav, it's in a double.
One second. You did what you were supposed to do. It was the Kohen that had the problem.
Okay, so now you're going back to your original shilas. You have to pay you.
He probably does.
Okay.
I mean, the Kohen was. I mean, the ballers were relying on the Kohen to do it properly.
Right.
He's doing everything. The baller's doing everything he's supposed to do.
Okay.
Everything he's supposed to do.
Okay, but still, Lamaisa, don't forget, the Kohen is the shliach of the Baal.
That's right.
So your shliach messed up. If you send the shliach messes up. It's still good. No, it's your shliach.
No. But
the shliach have to pay. That's the good. That's the shaila. Let me just finish the last two lines. Okay, we'll look into it.
What does it do what it's supposed to do?
The If it just would have said moitzes v'sechot tishmoy, I wouldn't have known the halacha of lishma. Because Rachman is a Torah to tell you the halacha of lishma. Because when I say Torah, I've minol paslu. If it just said the halacha of lishma, I would have said it's possible if you didn't do it lishma. Because Rachman it's v'sechot. Moitzes v'sechot means it's still kosher and it can still be brought as a nedava. Okay, we'll stop over here. We'll look into the shaila whether the